to show you. I have this like a point data, and I have the, and we have this data.
Well, if you go to the National Weather Service's, tidal estimates, they're all based on, in this whole region, are based on a single gauge that's in Virginia Key.
Actually,
there's subordinate estimates that are based on projections, but the real gauge is at Virginia Key. So it seems that
they use this gauge, but the ones I pulled for my study, I pulled 3 stations that are all close to the Port Everglades, and I'm sorry I didn't bring these maps, but there are a lot of gauge stations that are actually collecting
but those
data.
are points that they're projecting, they're not real. My understanding is there's no gauge, there's nobody, there's independent, people that are interested in fishing that have some information, but I don't know that it's being collected. The information that National Weather Service puts out is there's a single gauge. All the other locations are projections. There's not like a physical piece of equipment that's giving you that information. It's a projection based on, and so you can't really look at the abnormalities that you would have, like from wind and
there's a
that causes changes in the timing of the tides.
You know what? If you give me your information, I have this PowerPoints, and I'll give it so that you can examine them at closely. Yeah.
I have a question about the water supply issue, and at what point does when the tide rises, at what point does it infiltrate our
It already
freshwater
does.
supply? It already does?
It already does. It didn't include this, the saltwater intrusion, and I did not include anything about the natural systems because I had this amount of time to do, but it already does. And it's very problematic for saltwater because saltwater is much heavier and it's very easy. Oh, yes. Any other questions?
You started off with slides from Australia, and I wondered whether the response there is being done at the national level or the state level, or whether they're leaving it up to individual communities to figure out strategies.
That's a very good question, and I didn't have enough time to research that, but I think this conference was organized by coastal managers throughout Australia, the one that they presented. And the fact, because I remember the climate change research symposium last week we had in Boca. I remember Dr. Basikera mentioned something like that. He mentioned that he has seen tidal water coming out of the storm, the drainage system. He mentioned that, and I saw these pictures. It caught my attention, and I said, that's probably what he was talking about. The thing is that we don't have this account. They apparently go after this event and they take pictures, they film these events so that they understand, they try to understand. And we see this probably here in Florida, but nobody has taken, this effort to monitor, go and actually document these events. So, and I think the fact that they follow this and the fact that they have this pictures taken and they follow, so it means that there is some more efforts put into that at different scales than what we have here now.
And Charles, just real quick to respond to your question about Australia. I actually got to spend a month in Australia this past summer down in Gold Coast and Brisbane. Talking to a lot of planners, a lot of sort of get a sense of what's going on down there. And I offer 2 comments. Number one is they're not worried about mitigation like we tend to focus on here in Florida and elsewhere in the United States. They're truly have turned their attention to sea level rise. Right, the rise is going to happen. Let's mitigate. That's fine. Let's try to get better land use decisions, but let's turn our attention to sea level rise. Specifically to your question, the federal government there is delegating a lot of the responsibility down to the states. So it's sort of a state level responsibility. I think Australia has 6 states, if I recall correctly. But the federal government is also investing heavily in sea level rise related research, and they're beginning with where is the water going to rise. So they're trying to map, much like you're doing now, is what are the at-risk areas, and then let's start thinking about what do we do about it. They are much more active in terms of sea level rise, and they're also, the state is, as I understand it, the lead entities. We got time for one more question.
I've met with other climate scientists who, like you, were quite alarmed at the data, and they have felt that realtors, especially in Florida and other vulnerable areas, should be required to tell potential buyers about this information. Do you agree?
All right, that's my biggest concern. That's why I didn't show these maps to anybody, because I don't want to stir this panic around in people, and that's why I'm refraining showing these maps, and I don't publish these maps. I don't show anybody these maps. That's why I agree. You know, when we all agree that these are the areas of concern, or these are the areas, or let's say have them categorized in like areas of concern number 1, number 2, you know, see category 1, like the hurricanes, area of concern category 1, areas of concern category 2, when we have them and we all agree, like realtors, academics, and local governments, then we can go and show this to the public. You see what I mean? So what I'm trying to do now, it's my role as academic, is to find the best methodology. And as you can see, I went through a lot of different steps, starting with the bathtub approach, including some uncertainty into the bathtub approach, and then moving to something very different, which is probabilities that include the tidal surface, the tidal gauge information, and the LiDAR data in one package, so that create a little bit sense of what's going on. But it's not my role to actually make realtors do whatever they need to do, and I'm not in local government to make decisions what we're going to do. So that's my role. So that's what I do best. But when we all agree, these are our area of concern, category 1 to category 5, then we go to the public and say, here, that's what we have here. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting that here in South Florida we have a 4-county compact, and what we're doing, there are a group of I think 12 of us from the Water Management District, from the Corps of Engineers, from the county, and some from the private sector, and we're trying to come up with an agreed upon projection that we can use for this area.
Absolutely.
And out of that may come some of the more public, because that involves the political process at the local level, and it involves the science process. And I think the whole emphasis that our university is following, but also the county is following, is exactly what they're doing in Australia, and saying, yeah, sea level is going to rise. Well, sea level has risen. It's already got problems. We're already re-engineering some of the water management structures here. Sea level is going to rise. When, we're not sure, but we better make sure that we're already beginning the adaptation process, and your work is a major part of that. The other part, though, has to be looking at the groundwater data, the groundwater interaction, where our database is not nearly as good, strangely enough, and how, as you mentioned, how we look at the inland areas in terms of flooding as well as the coastal areas. So it's not a simple equation of looking at the coast, but looking at water interactions, groundwater, seawater, rainfall over the whole area. And that's very complex, and your piece is a major part of it. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Professor Len Berry, who is the leader of our climate change research priority here at FAU, which is one of the research priorities decided by the university. And as he mentioned, we work together with the scientists from the group and then also with the regional compact. So I've been, the counties are all familiar with this type of methodologies, and so they do their own work, but we've been together with NOAA and to try to figure out the best methodology to do that.
Well, Professor Mitsova, thank you very much. I think we're going to take a brief break and then start right back up as close to 3 as we can, so we got a full panel, live panel. So, brief break.